Hello and welcome to this episode, Susie. Uh, it's such an honor to connect with you. Uh, Almost a typical way of traveling this route of what I've been doing for the last 2 years. This initiative is called the Values Workshop, and these podcasts are basically thinking aloud episodes. Or people who are hesitant to join in, I call them the coffee shop conversations, where we go all out and just reveal ourselves. The objective is to give a voice to those unsaid fears and doubts and uh, typical things that we go through as human beings. A lot of us are quite shy and may have these internal conflicts, storms, thoughts, dreams, which trouble us. And this is a bit of a connection for them to know there are other people who go through the same things and have their own way of uh, figuring out life through values, through decisions that help them. So that's the basic objective. It's been an absolutely blind alley that I go into most of the time because I don't know many of the guests. Some of them are known to me, but when they come on the podcast, I find that I didn't know a lot about them either. And just to set your mind at ease, even I do not know what I am doing with this. In every episode, it's a discovery of sorts. So if you are concerned about that, you do not know what's going to happen, I have no clue either. These days, I have grown a little more braver. I used to think of one question before I began. So while I was setting up, I would think of one question that I would ask the guest, and then the conversation would roll from there. These days, I don't even think of that one question. I put on the camera and then I start to think, okay, what comes out? The idea is that it makes it more authentic and it's a level playing field. I'm as introspective as you are. So welcome. Before we begin, would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I'm happy to be here. Obviously, I think my initial response to be a part of the podcast was no way. Because there was some resistance there because a shyness or I'm a deep feeler and the experiences my experiences are so deep, and often I get up to the throat and then I get blocked in the expression part, in a verbal way. So for that very reason, I thought, well, just throw yourself out there. Just that I could see the resistance, and I thought, well, I'll just say yes. And a good friend of mine in Argentina, one of my close friends, she always used to say, just show up. You don't have to do anything else. Just show up for the appointment. That's all you got to do in life. Just show up. The rest just happens. So I thought I'll just show up. And so I was born in Australia. I'm a twin. I have a twin brother, 2 minutes older sister. I'm currently in Tiruvannamalai in Tamil Nadu. I've been in India for the last 4 months, roughly. My first time, and definitely won't be my last. And the India door just opened, and it was time for that door to open and in all its glory. And here I am. And but getting here, I guess many events in my life. When you were talking about, explaining a bit about, the doubts or what we face, instantly all kinds of ideas came up for me. So and I guess that's how I'm going to introduce myself, which is through taking a road less traveled, I guess, and having the courage to keep, not even the courage, I guess, because life just pushes me forward anyway. I feel that's what's happening, and And sometimes I wonder if I'm, how much am I making the decisions, and how much is when I go around in a huge big circle and come back to the same point and think, well, if I didn't have the conditioning I had, and if I hadn't had the experiences that I had, then would I make any other decision? And so I've, and then I relax. So how much am I driving, and how much am I letting go of the steering wheel, and how do I find that middle way all the time? It's a constant dance. And so I've been, I was a dancer, Argentine tango dancer for a few years, and I trained in Argentina, and I moved to London, and then I found a dance partner in Turkey, in Istanbul, and I lived in Istanbul for 3 years and trained there, where I had an accident and injured my knee, and then from there that kind of changed the direction of my life. I went back to Australia, came back to Turkey again, went back to Australia, and I got into the path of, I guess the teaching for me was how to take care of myself. I was pushing all my limits, and pushing all my body, and trying to make up for lost time, discovering I was a dancer later on in life, I guess. And so that was quite a humbling experience. I was in rehabilitation for 2 years. I refused an operation. I got acupuncture. I experimented with all kinds of alternative medicine, and got into movement, and I became a Pilates instructor. I don't know if you've heard of Pilates. It's a movement system based, it's a postural training. And so then I got into rehabilitation, kind of working with rehabilitation and movement, but it's a holistic system, holistic angle, and that's been I went back to study again to get more information, a Bachelor of Human Movement, which I didn't finish, but I got what I wanted. And then after about 4 years intensively working in that field, I had restlessness, after living overseas and having the experiences that I'd had this restlessness surging, and the existential crisis that happens every 6 months or something like that. And in that, I decided to write kind of a bucket list of what was most important to me in life, and what I would do before I died, and which was basically about people, go back to the countries where I'd lived and visit people who had impacted me in my life, and have a coffee with them or sit down with them, and really ask how they were, and be present with them, and then go to the Sahara Desert with no technology, into the deepest silence that I could, and not come out until I'd worked out all my internal issues. So I'm almost there. I'll try and cut the story, try and make it shorter, but basically on my way to the Sahara, it was the wrong time of the year. I'd run out of money. I was in Europe, and the mission wasn't complete. And there I was, kind of, do I go back to Australia and start from zero without having kind of done what I came to do in a way? Or the daughter of a tango dancing friend had given me a book about the Camino de Santiago, which is the pilgrimage across Spain, from the Pyrenees Mountains across the other side. I wasn't even going to Spain. It wasn't even on my list. And somehow there I was in Barcelona. And basically all the circumstances came together for me to do that pilgrimage. We were at a monastery. They were giving the passport credentials to do it. Someone bought me some boots. The friend I was with had a backpack. They lent it to me. And, there I was on my way, just to do half. I'll just do half, and then I'll go back to Australia. At least I've done something. It's not the desert, but it's that step towards, some kind of, internal journey. And then on the bus ride to the middle point, I just had this intuition that I can't do halfway. I've got to do the whole thing. And 24 hours later, I was on the other side of the Pyrenees Mountains, sent my phone inside my suitcase to the end point, to a storage place, and started walking. And then I had a huge experience on that way. And I never got the plane back to Australia. I lived on the pilgrimage for 2 years. I was in a string of events that happened there. For more than one of those years, I was living on the side of the road at a very simple place on a bench, serving the pilgrims. And then from that point onwards, I think it was a kind of like a life-changing event. And then I ended up in a meditation center when I left there. And then the last 7 years, that's kind of the last 7 years have just been an intense. I renounced everything and began to experiment with the universal laws of invisible universal laws of, like, the more you give, but it has to be from the right place with the right intention, and different extremes, I should say. It was quite extreme, but I definitely don't regret it, because it was through that experience that there was kind of no going back after that. And so that's brought me kind of here. I've been house sitting for the last 4 years, which was one of the meditation teachers that a couple were going away to a long course, and I'd just come out of I'd been living 6 months in the center, and I had nothing, and I wasn't, I wasn't attached. I had no attachments, basically, material, nothing tying me down, was what I want to say. And so they offered for me to look after the house. And there I was in this situation, which has been going on for about the last 4 years, of just house after house, but not just any house, nice house in nature, library full of, all these books. And as if life was saying, no, this is okay. I would have huge attacks of self-doubt, and like, I felt guilty. I felt like, how should I get this red carpet? And, and everything just kept getting provided in the most extraordinary way. So, and then I had to kind of break that cycle, and then somehow the door opened up to India, and here I am. So that's as brief as I can do it.
Okay. Before I ask you any questions, I bow down to your life experiences because of the beauty and the honesty of your answer. And the first question that I actually want to ask is, while you were talking almost at the fag end, I was thinking, if the intro is this long, what is the question I want to ask? And I should be asking deeper questions. And she seems to have a very weighty intro. And then I said, hello, why are you so uncomfortable waiting for the question to pop up? This is a wonderful life description that you're hearing. Why can't you be here? And then suddenly I was at peace. I want to bring this up because very often I come across as a guy who listens very well. Of late, when it has been told to me this often, I am at pains to tell them I'm not like this always. Just that I have to listen very carefully because I'm able to respond as best as I can. But today then I realized, okay, I am also impatient with asking a question or something, although I did not have the question. So let's connect this to the question. Why are we impatient to be ahead of ourselves? Since you traveled so much and you've had experiences, you kept calling it life-changing experiences. I thought, but this is life. It keeps changing all the time for you, because they are all,
of course,
they're all beautiful and weighty. Like, you've not gone and done something which is superficial for the moment thing. You've given yourself time for the pilgrimage or the Sahara Desert experience, or even going back to Australia. You just briefly touch it, but you keep going back to some kind of home ground, coming back, going somewhere else. So why this innate need as human beings to think of the future and try and be secure of sorts? Like in my case, this would be that, oh, I've asked a very relevant question, now I'm getting an answer. But why does the question have to be there? The description was explicit and explanatory enough. Like you were discovering, like I thought, one of the funny questions that popped up was, how old are you? It seems like 100 years, so many experiences. So, things like that. So,
Well, should I say my age? Yes. I just turned 41 in June. So
oh, wonderful. But it's a well-lived life. So why are we so desperate about being secure? What do you want to say about that?
I think it's I think it's a great question. It's so loaded question. And I think most of my struggles in these attacks of self-doubt have been because of this this need to appear secure when I get present, or when I realize that all my needs are taken care of, that there's no that I'm, and from my experience more and more I understand that it doesn't exist, and that it's, you know, that security. What is that security? You know, like what is that security? What is it based on? You know, and in my case, it's because of my age, because of you know, I'm not married, no kids, no house, no, you know, stable job at the moment. So all of those factors are usually on the list of what makes somebody, you know, what gives somebody security, I guess. And I'm at a point now where maybe it's the 40s, not having ticked all those boxes in that way is slowly I'm becoming more confident in the direction of my life, I guess. It's not, instead of feeling like a failure, which does come up for me sometimes. On a dark day, I'll feel like I've failed in my life, basically. You know, and then obviously other moments where, you know, no way, you know, I have no regrets, and it's, you know, it's colorful and it's rich, and it couldn't be any other way if I trace it all back, maybe, you know. But I don't know, that maybe, yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, go on.
No, one of the things that I found amusing was I have exactly what the boxes that you're mentioning. I don't feel secure at all. Because I was thinking, okay, I've arranged for the house. I landed up just finishing off my loan last year or something. Felt a great deal of relief. Okay, this part is over and I'm in a good place. I have work now. Luckily, life has been kind. I've been working from home for 8-10 years now. I've had a couple of bad years. COVID and all was difficult at times. It was difficult for everyone. But the needs have always been quite limited in that sense. The world was closed. There was no way to express one's needs either. If you like traveling or if you like buying stuff, nothing was available. And luckily, I'm a homebody. I can spend months at my place and just be comfortable doing nothing. So even though I seem to have some part of it, I also remembered one religious discourse I had heard many years back by somebody from our religion, and he used to have this lovely way of reading our scriptures and explaining it to people and introspecting on them aloud. And he was genuinely an inspiring figure as we grew up. So one of the things that he had said was the fact that what we fight for is food and sustenance. Like, and he continued explaining this from a rich person's point of view as well. He says if you're happy, if you have food for today, you're happy, but you're worried about tomorrow. Since somebody else has a job and everything, they are happy because now they have a job, they have a long-term assurance of sustenance. But somebody about that, who's a business person or something, has much more, and for years they have managed to, they know that they will have food. Once that need is crossed, you're working for generations. You want your kids to have assurance of food. Their next generation should have. So there is also a phrase in India which says that these guys can eat for 7 generations. So again, it comes back to the fact that you have food. And then he pointed out to one of the lines in our scriptures which says, everyone who's born, his food is arranged before the birth itself. So one of the things that he mentions is a woman starts lactating even before the kid is born, or just as the kid is born. So your food is already ready before you are. Or else the Siberian cranes, the other birds who travel from there to India during the harsh winters. He says if they leave kids behind, who do you think takes care of them? And so there is enough food if one were to just feel assured without these outer manifestations of it. My personal understanding is, we want the security of the known. It is the unknown that puts the fear in us. Because I want to now ask you a question specifically because of your experience. You said these fears still arise sometimes. Now, so many years of not having this should have trained you for the absence of this question. But it doesn't seem to be. So intrinsically, what is missing according to you?
You mean the fact that that doubt still arises, or
all of them? When you went to Sahara, you said you couldn't complete it. So your plans may be perfect, but sometimes they don't fall in place. When you went to the pilgrimage, you did something exactly opposite of what you had thought. You went back to Australia, you never stayed back. You kept coming back to either Istanbul, you came to serve somewhere. Then you are now in India for the last 4 months. Now with this kind of insecurity that you pick up on your own, knowingly so, because you don't really know. You have a fair idea, okay, I'm going here, I'll be provided for. But it's really an open-ended kind of security. Now, by now...
It's,
Yeah. So as a human, you should be trained. Why the fear should still be there is just a question that I'm thinking aloud.
Why is the fear still there? Or
Why is the fear still
there? It's not there as much, to be honest. In fact, the fear and terror I have is more of a conventional life now, because it's been so long, truthfully, it's been so long, I've been surfing in a way. And there is a fear. There is a slight fear that in any moment I'll be forgotten. God will forget me, or this will just be a dream, and then suddenly I'll have to. It's like a kind of suddenly. But I have a deal. I have my own deal with the universe, with God, with whatever you want to call it. That as soon as I have to show up and plug into that conventional life, I'm prepared to do that. It's not that I'm resisting and avoiding that. I'm also prepared to do it, and I have to come to that place and then a door opens, and then and then I say, okay, by grace, another chapter, another, and then it has become a way of life. But yeah, why? But yeah, there's always a doubt. Sometimes a doubt comes up, of course, because I don't really know, you know. On a day when I'm connected, maybe everything makes sense. Everything makes sense, and I'm exactly where I'm meant to be, and not a piece is out of place, you know, in the
True.
you know, the divine organization of things. But then there's moments and tests, I guess. But the way I feel is the more work I do internally, and the more introspection, and the less I know, the less idea I have. In a strange way, you know, it's a free fall, and I'm the hands go back on the steering wheel, and then they come off, and then you know, there's, you know, that goes on.
Constant.
That still goes on.
Yeah. This is wonderful, because I was just thinking the same thing. In a way, the physical manifestations of either security or insecurity, for that matter, are not as important as our mental framework in any space. And I love the fact that you said that you have made peace with the fact that even if conventional life comes knocking, you're going to open the door and, you know, experience it as well. And that, I think, is therein lies the key, at least in my experience. Very, very, very little things happen. I'm outside, I don't have my windshield or umbrella, it starts to rain. Earlier, I used to play with these things. I used to say, okay, let it not rain for 3 minutes by the time I reach some kind of shelter, known shelter or whatever. But over a period, I realized it was playing with things that were that also affected other people. It wasn't the right way to deal with things. So while other people might have thought of them as miracles or stuff like that, to me, I said, no, I think it's not the right way.
Yeah.
Over a period, I'm learning to accept what is as much as possible. And I say, yeah, so what's wrong in getting wet? What's wrong in whatever the problem situation that we are thinking of?
Exactly.
And I think the worst is what? You will die of a certain thing at some point of time. And then that's all right too, because that is also a given. So if we are forever thinking that, okay, we are going to die at some point, and accept the worst of it, which a lot of people are in a hurry to call pessimism. I don't think it is pessimism, it's pragmatism from what we've seen of life. While listening to your story, I was like, wow, this is right out of a lot of Paulo Coelho books, where one keeps on seeing that he goes out on this. A lot of it I don't seem to like. Sometimes now I think they are a little too catering in a particular direction. But the idea of discomfort is very beautifully presented always. His protagonist is always in the middle of accepting something that he or she doesn't like. And that is very intriguing.
Yes, and I think also that nothing is as it seems, you know. I mean, it's been many, many years since I've read a Paulo Coelho book, but I think that some of the idea is that it's, you know, he can flip something, an appearance around, and give it, you know, the salvation of the prostitute or the whatever, or the, you know, kind of flip it around, but it's like a certain fatalism. I don't know. I think what you were saying before, I was reminded of a friend of mine who's, you know, he's older guy who's been meditating many years, and I said, you know, so much meditation, so much practice, you know, like so what, you know? And he said, well, and I'll never forget it, it was just a simple phrase, but he said, well, you know, the more as the years go on, you know, the funny thing is I just, you know, I feel more ordinary, you know, I just become more and more ordinary. There's no, you know, and that really struck me, you know, And I think, you know, as exotic and extreme and intense as my story sounds, and in a way, I feel it's been a blessing because because in my case, I felt like I'd been pushed off a couple of cliffs, and that really catapulted me into a deeper introspection in a way, which is easier. Somehow it's easier when you're pushed into a corner than when you're kind of sorting through it with the, you know, with the everyday life around you, you know. So who knows, you know, in a way for me, I feel like it's almost been easier for that reason. And my work now, and as it's happening, is this: how to integrate everything, you know, how to integrate everything into life, you know, living life. It's just, and being practical, and you know.
Yeah. That's a very interesting word you use here, because very often we use words which are far more esoteric. When we start the journey, we like to describe it in extraordinary ways. I don't know if I was talking to somebody or this phrase came to me, was that the sacred is actually ordinary. We like to place it on a pedestal and say, okay, no, this is sacred, and we'll bow down and revere it so much that it becomes away from us. The idea of God, for example, for a lot of people, when I see them, they seem to be loving an idea of God, but they think it's an impractical idea that they are indulging in, vis-a-vis living their lives in a way that they are always living without any actual introspection of how they are living their lives. In the initial part, it's true for all of us. There is no looking down on others for their experiences. Everybody has their own stories. If it may not be as dramatic as yours, it's all right. But I think when I think back and look at myself staying at home, I've had experiences which are far more fulfilling and challenging, and forcing me into corners where I had to ask myself, who am I? What do I really want? How do I want to go about this? It could be as simple as, I was discussing with someone that I never wanted to be a hugely successful person, because I thought that would be very limiting in a way of living an ordinary life. And I liked my little spaces of being where I could just go on the road, across the road, have a cup of tea, or I want to be able to do that throughout my life, if possible. Meet ordinary people who may be lower in economic status, but interesting lives, happy lives, human stories. I find that very, very, the term I use is medicine. Like, for all the pain of life, it is just human relationships of different kinds that seem to be easing the pain of existence. And it is not necessarily people who we know. Like, this conversation that is happening is so easygoing that I don't even, after the first time I felt in your intro that I need to ask a question, I have no questions. I've just come to ease with the fact that, okay, there may not be a question. Let me just say what's coming up, and let's see what's coming up. This is genuinely a blessing. You used a phrase somewhere, on days when I feel connected, every piece is in place. I think of late, just because I have around 9-10 years on you, one of the things that I am realizing is, even when the pieces are not in place, they are in place.
Exactly.
This is a problem of perception rather than, or again, the sense of comfort that we look for. Okay, no, this needs to be in place in a certain manner for me to be happy. Sometimes it's okay to be unhappy as well. But very rightly put by you in a different manner was that you realize that you just have to show up. When you say you show up, that means you are already knowing that it might get uncomfortable, but I'm still showing up. Let's see what happens. And then when you're going through the experience, you realize it's fairly ordinary. I am ordinary, the situation is ordinary, and there is nothing special happening.